Also joining us in this conversation is public affairs analyst Emeka Maduago. Emeka, I want to say thank you very much. We still have Odi in our Abuja studio, but before we get to Emeka, let's bring you in. And a lot of people have been scoring INEC very low, but Governor Hope Uzodimma thinks otherwise, and he's actually been pouring economics on INEC and how they've actually performed today.
Well, thank you very much. INEC is just an umpire, and it's expected that all stakeholders, the contestants, their supporters, their agents, and the voting public as well as the security agencies will be very interested in the successful conduct of the elections. So, to the extent that INEC, from field reports, INEC has acquitted itself to a large extent. But, of course, INEC has also responded quickly to a report from one of the states about pre-recorded election results, which it said it's looking into. So definitely, I think INEC INEC knows that Nigerians desire something much, much better than what we saw during the last general elections. During the last general elections, a lot was left, much was left to be desired. So definitely, INEC has an opportunity to redeem its image, to redeem itself, and to reassure Nigerians that, like it said, that it doesn't have any candidate in this election. I'll just quickly want to just say one thing, that when you look at all the violence and all of that, there's this thing that is said that Nigerian politicians are basically the same, that the parties are basically the same. It's more about interest and values. So if you spend so much time, invest in so much violence, trying to bribe the people to get your candidate in, now, it doesn't matter who gets in, because Nigerian politicians easily defect from one party to the other. So I think the best thing is for us to stay on the straight and narrow path. That is to make sure that the elections are credible, free, and fair. So to the extent that I think INEC has tried to some extent, but of course, the voting is still on and the reports are still coming in. So I hope INEC doesn't disappoint Nigerians once again.
And of course, you have touched on that case of pre-recorded, result sheets in Kogi State. Now, let's get a little bit deeper into that conversation. Earlier I said, what are the corrective measures? It's one thing for INEC to publicly accept and acknowledge that, thank you for bringing this to our attention, it is indeed true, and to say they are investigating. What are the following steps that need to happen to restore confidence? Because some may say, well, you say you've noticed and you investigate. Will you investigate? What will happen from here? So what are the further steps they need to take to ensure that confidence is restored, that there was a case of malpractice and they quickly resolved the issue and we were all able to move on and retain our confidence in this process?
Yeah, of course. INEC, if you look at the comments on INEC's X handle, you see that a lot of people are not confident that INEC will do justice to the matter. That is one. Secondly, the police and the Ministry of Justice, of course, they have prosecutorial powers. And they are supposed to actually bring people who engage in electoral malpractices to book. They are supposed to be able to apprehend people. There's another case, an allegation that some party agents were caught with a large amount of money in one of the states, which they allegedly intended to use in inducing voters. You see, so the problem is not about whether there's evidence of election malpractices, but the fact is, one thing that is missing in our society, in Nigeria today, is that we encourage impunity. People feel they can do things and get away with it. There's no punishment. There's a lot of bias in terms of dealing with offenders. So INEC, like some people have said that a separate body, separate from INEC, should be created to deal with, maybe an electoral offences commission should be established, or maybe an agency or something that will deal with electoral offences. Because we must invest heavily in terms of ensuring voter confidence, that Nigerians are confident enough to turn out in their numbers to vote in the elections. But when people just get away with it, during the general elections, you heard about a member of the House of Reps who was caught with a large sum of money in foreign currency. What has happened? Nothing. Nothing has been heard about it. You heard about issues of violence, suspected party thugs who were caught. Nothing has happened. So we must definitely stop encouraging impunity. We must punish offenders, people who incite violence, people who sponsor thugs, miscreants, to shoot, kill people, to snatch ballot boxes, to bribe people, to engage in all forms of electoral malpractice. They should be dealt with.
We'll need you to just hold on for a moment.
Okay.
You're still with us here in the studio, but let's cross over to Abuja once again, and we'll be speaking to Umma. Umma, before we let you go, I would just like you to summarize your own experience for these off-cycle elections in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa State for us. Lessons learned so far.
Okay, I just want to say that before we score a neck high, election does not start and end today. The process leading the election, if it's not credible, election will not be credible. The person, ANEC Rec, President Commissioner in Imo State, is a PC person. So why wouldn't the governor also praise ANEC to the high heavens? And also, he is the one who nominated the person to ANEC, and ANEC approved and endorsed. So, and also, it's important to know that what happened in Imo State today, it has started happening since year 2020 January. They have been captured of the Imo State and oppressed the people of Imo State, and many people, especially youths of Imo State, have been murdered in cold blood and communities sacked. So people who wanted to lead today's election prepared for it for 3 years, 3.5 years. And here we are today. The story is that they will have their way because they have destroyed the people, oppressed them, captured them. And what we see in Kogi and Bayelsa, whatever, like when you see the Kogi is coming out, despite anything, we are going to vote and we remain here to vote. They are actually expressing their frustration with a system that put them down. We were all witnesses to what happened in year 2019 in Kogi and what is happening today in Bayelsa. Even leading to this election in Bayelsa, there were threats of violence and threat that we will kill and throw into the sea if you do not support a particular political party. And some of them make good their word. But what we are also saying now, despite everything that have happened, in many places, INEC opened up on time, opening of polls happened on time, in Bayelsa, in Kogi. What we are saying is that there is still one game changer that people are hoping to see. Upload of the result of this election from the polling units to INEC viewing portal. If they refuse result viewing portal, if they do not do it, everything you have said and they have done today is the same old story of year 2023 general election. And people will still be angry and frustrated and without hope. No matter how people come to TV and say, we can still be hopeful. We know what is in Nigeria today. And we need to change it and also take back. I know Imo State will rise again, for sure.
Thank you so much for tying everything together so well, Maodi of the Situation Room. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to more conversations with you. But now back into studio with Emeka IREV. Less noise being made about IREV in this particular election. Can we say that it was the hope of IREV being the savior of transparent elections, the hope in BVAS that was emphasized on time and time again in the lead up to the general election of February 25th? Has that been demystified? Are we letting go of these things as tools that we hope to enhance the credibility of our elections?
Well, I still believe that INEC has not discarded beavers, discarded IREV and all of that. But you see, the problem has to do with the political class. The political class. When it favors them, you know, they endorse things that do not help the electoral process. I mean, you heard the comments made by certain, you know, top politicians around the 2023 election about the IREV, you know, that even though it was in it was clear in INEC's guidelines, you know, what should be done in terms of, you know, the use of the IREV, the use of beavers. But you saw how they now started providing excuses for the very, you know, for you know, how INEC acted in the breach of its own guidelines. So definitely, I hope these things are not discarded, because elections should be one of the simplest things that Nigerians can do. We spend too much money, a lot of money in organizing elections, money that should go into development, money that should go into taking care of healthcare, education, just for people to cast their votes. So I think we need to really move more quickly in terms of electronic voting, in terms of diaspora voting, so that some of these things, we need to demystify some of these things. You'll find out that, you know, politicians claim huge figures that, okay, they have this and they have that. But at the end of the day, when you look at the turnout is so poor. Turnout is so poor. And then you wonder, where are those voters you were saying, you know, will come out to support?
Carriers with heavy, gun-toting security agencies and the DSS trying to scare citizens that they are ready for any mayhem. And what do you see at the end of the day? By the time the election begins and ends, you realize that a lot of perfidy and violence.
I'd just like Chide to hold that thought. For now, Arise senior correspondent Benga Ashiru joins us now from Ajaokuta, that's Kogi State. Good afternoon and welcome to the program. Can you give us an update of the situation in Ajaokuta currently?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lepai and Aaron. It's good to be at Ajaokuta, the popular Ajaokuta Live. We are at Ganeja local government, Ganeja ward in Ganeja local government in Ajaokuta. Ajaokuta is just about 20 minutes from the state capital, Lokoja. And just a moment ago, we understand that some suspected group came in and attempted to subvert the process by snatching ballot box. But we, on the DIG, is here to see the situation on ground. We have the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Habu Sani, who is also the head of intelligence of the Nigerian police. So he's here with us, DIG. You can join us. He's receiving phone calls now. You could imagine what the situation is all about, but I can give you a sneak preview of what Ajaokuta is. It has about 95,000 registered voters with about 146 polling units. So here is the DIG here with me to give us the situation update. DIG, you're welcome on Arise News.
Welcome.
Please, could you give us information on the fact that we understand that some suspected groups were here a moment ago attempting to subvert the process by snatching ballot box?
Well, we have gone around, and this is one of the very critical area that we have to look for, and that's why we're here. We know that it has the largest concentration of voters here, and we have not left any stone unturned to ensure that the place is really fortified. Well, assess the situation. We are going to also add additional men to secure this, particularly because of the counting period. We are now entering the critical period of the election. That counting and then entering of result from the polling units, which is the basic to the ward level, and then transmitted to the local government collection level before coming to the state.
But Ganeja is one of the flashpoints, DIG. It's expected that the surveillance here should be stronger than usual, considering the fact that
if you have checked around, you should be able to see the type of deployment that is in place in this area. We have already fortified the place. If you go out, you will see the various security outfits that are already on ground. And I told you, after assessing the situation now, we are going to have additional manpower that will give to this deploy to this area. We have a commissioner of police on ground just for this particular voting points. So the commissioner will coordinate the activities of all security agencies here. So I feel let the people have confidence and then below abiding, the result will be counted and entered appropriately and escorted to the proper level of escalating the result to the final collection center, where every result would be collected for the state. So they have nothing to fear. We have seen it and we have known that this place is the highest in fact in the country where you have concentration of voters here, and we cannot take any step that will not be proper to protect this polling unit.
Okay, DIG, could you tell us about the circulation of fake results, fake voting sheets at Mangogo local government?
Well, if there's anything like that, we are going to investigate.
No, Yaga reported that earlier.
That is Yaga. So they will need to escalate that to us so they'll be able to see what they are escalating. I cannot talk on what I've not seen yet. But what is there, when our teams send in their report, we'll be able to see, and then we'll now know where is it, and then we'll now continue.
Has the boys been there to verify this report? or haven't you heard
all units, voting is ongoing in the various places. So if there's any result, it has not even reached the point of even counting and then entering result yet. So there's nowhere we have seen that voting have stopped. So if there's anybody arrested anywhere, we'll be able to do this. So that's why I said you should exercise patience. By the time we collect all the information available, we'll be able to brief you on this
what
situation.
about reports about killings in some of the local government? Have you heard anything like that? What are you
For
doing
now, I'm telling you, as far as electoral process is concerned, I've not seen any killing that has taken place in any. So if there's any other thing, maybe it's a normal crime that anybody can be arrested and then investigated on that.
From information available to you, sir, has there been any case of ballot box snatching here?
I've not seen. I've not gotten any report of valuable snatching. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, DIG. You've heard from the Deputy Inspector General of Police. He has given us the situation update and is assuring that the surveillance on ground is just not business as usual. In all fairness, earlier in the day we saw aerial surveillance, a show of the security might, and it's just a confirmation that they are dead serious in the mission to change the off-cycle and off-season narrative in Kogi State. So from Ganeja local government, we've brought you the report from the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Habu Sani, who is also the head of police intelligence. Right now, we would also like to hear from the INEC REC in charge of Kogi State. I understand he's around here. Yeah. Okay. We can have the INEC REC. Okay. You can come closer. Yeah. Could you confirm to us the reports from Yaga Africa and the Civil Society Situation Room that there were circulation of fake results, fake voting sheets in Mangogo local government?
I cannot confirm any because I haven't had such reports yet. So I cannot confirm anything. Yaga is not INEC. So as far as I'm concerned, my men in the field have not reported this incident as you are referring to.
So what's your observation so far in terms of getting a preliminary report from you?
Well, as you can see, I hope you followed us from where we started and up to this point, and where we've been. We've all been able to check in the fact that people have been accredited, voting has gone on smoothly in those areas we've visited. And so at this point, we've come here, been the largest polling unit in the country with 13,000 registered voters. You yourself have seen the and as you've emphasized, we will ensure that people should be very orderly and ensure that as long as there are people in the queue, they don't have to stop at 2:30. As long as there are people in the queue, that's what the law says. They will have to be accredited and they will have to vote until the last person on the queue votes. They cannot close polling.
Thank you very much, INEC REC. So you've heard from basically the key gatekeepers in midwifing the political transition process in Kogi State. The INEC yesterday gave an assurance promising its stance on political neutrality and its promise to deliver on credible elections in Kogi State. From Ganaja local government from Ganaja in Ajakuta local government, Benga Ashiru, Arise News.
Thanks to you, Benga from Ajakuta there. But let's cross live to Imo State capital, as a matter of fact, Owerri, where senior correspondent Oba Ade is standing by. Oba, we hear that you have with you over there the DIG, Frank Uba. Talk to us.
Yes, the security situation in Imo State has been so commendable. We've been to a number of local governments in town, and I can tell you that security men have comported themselves so comfortably well. Aaron, I think there's a feedback. There's a feedback here. Can we adjust that?
No problem. The engineers are actually on that. You can just continue. We're still listening to you, and we can hear you loud and clear from this angle.
So I was telling you that the security situation across Imo State has been encouraging since this exercise started in the morning. You remember that in the build-up to this election, the Inspector General of Police, that's IGP Kayode Egbetokun, deployed 3 DIGs to the 3 major states where we'll be having off-season elections, which include Kogi State, Bayelsa, and Imo State. And the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Frank Mba, who is in charge of Department of Training and Development, was deployed to oversee the election in Imo State. And he has been on ground going from one point to another, coordinating things, ensuring that things work according to plan. And we came to the police headquarters here in Owerri, where I have DIG Frank Mba standing by. Let's see if we can get a word or two from him, telling us what he has seen so far going on the field. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah, so very quickly, tell us what is the situation in town based on the report you have and what you have seen from your own personal assessment.
Well, so far, so good. We've been on ground, and we've also been able to conduct robust patrols of the entire state. We have our men in all the 27 local government areas. The entire wards are adequately covered. We have a very strong, tactical, rapid response unit stationed here at the headquarters, who have been dealing with pockets of incidences that have been coming up from time to time. But I think the most important thing for Nigerians to know is that the security arrangement put in place here by the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Egbetokun, is not just what people are seeing today. Prior to this election and prior to the polling that is taking place today, the Nigerian Police Force had conducted a very detailed, comprehensive security and threat analysis. And on the basis of those analyses, we were able to carry out an intelligence-driven deployment, a pre-election deployment, which was largely intelligence-driven. And this deployment actually has been responsible for the largely peaceful conduct of the elections you are having today. So we started our security operations in the build-up to this election weeks ago. We've been able to carry out very offensive operations. We've been able to identify, isolate, and deal decisively with some of those that were expected to be to give us a lot of trouble today. We've kept them busy. We've kept them engaged. We've been able to put up a very successful, largely successful strategy. Call it a counter-violence operation, and we've been able to suppress, manage, and deal with a lot of a lot of elements that would have actually caused much violence today. And so today we've so far had a peaceful atmosphere, and we are positive that it will continue till the end of the elections. I don't expect that there won't be incidents, but I can assure you that even though we are positive, but we've also trained, deployed, and prepared ourselves even for worst case scenarios.
Okay, you agree with me that in the build-up to this election, there are fears that Imo State may witness some pockets of clashes or uprising here and there, especially from people who are averse to this process. I'm talking about the exercise of the election. And in your response just now, you mentioned that except for pockets of clashes here and there, I want you to give us more details about these clashes you mentioned.
Well, when I use the word pocket of incidents, they are not anything for anybody to worry about. When emotions go high during elections, you certainly hear people scream at each other. And it is very common with us Nigerians. I mean, it is part of our subculture to scream at each other, call one another ole, call one another all kind of names. But that's just who we are. And when we notice tempers flaring, we are always there on time to stand in between the two people and to calm them down and de-escalate those situations very quickly. So I'm sure you will agree with me that this is not what the prophets of doom predicted. We've been able to silence a lot of the guns coming from the criminals, and we'll continue to be at full alert. We'll continue to do what is right. We continue to provide level playing field. We'll continue to conduct very robust patrols, high visibility patrols, confidence building patrols. We are undercover operatives. We continue to infiltrate all the nooks and crannies of the state, and we also continue to collaborate and partner with our brothers and sisters in the Nigerian military, and the intelligence services and the other paramilitary agencies. And so for me, I just want to encourage Imo people to continue to be who they are, peaceful people. I mean, and support what we're doing, work with us, work with the government, and at the end of the day, we will all leave this, we'll all come out of this process victorious.
Okay, going about town this morning, I saw your men working with other agencies, including the military, and I know you've also been in town. You've been to town and you've seen some of your men around town. What are your impressions about the way they've comported themselves? Is that what you expected of them? Are they living up to your expectations?
Before this exercise, we've conducted a lot of trainings and retraining program for our personnel. The Inspector General of Police deployed tested and trusted trainers down to the 3 states where the off-season election were built to take place. And we carried out a lot of trainings. And so some of these trainings were also done in collaboration with members of other agencies. And so we prepared adequately for this. At places like Uguta and other riverine areas, the police marine unit, the Nigerian police marine unit is working in collaboration with the Nigerian Navy. On the air today, when we were on area patrol, our pilots were speaking to the Air Force pilots who were also on top of their chopper and hovering the city. So there were two helicopters simultaneously hovering around the state, one belonging to the Nigerian Police Force and one belonging to the Nigerian Air Force. And the pilots of both aircraft were talking to themselves and sharing intelligence between the two crews. And then on ground, we are also working with the Army, we are working with the Customs, we are working with the Civil Defense, we are working with the Road Safety, we are working with the DSS, we are working with every legitimate agency that is statutorily part of this exercise. And so that's who we are. We're Nigerians. Our interest is Nigeria. We are creations of the law. We will continue to advance the law.
Thank you so very much, Diaji Frankumba. Thank you so much, and we wish you all the best. So I've been speaking with the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Frank Mba, bringing us up to speed with what the security situation looks like across Imo State as the exercise continues. In some places where we have visited on our way coming here, we see that the process is still ongoing, and any moment from now, ballot sorting and ballot counting should begin in some of these polling units across town. Aaron.
They're from Owerri. But let's still stick with Imo State and let's bring in our rights correspondent, Emeka Moye. Emeka, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. You are in Assumpta Avenue in Owerri, talking about the state capital of Imo State. Emeka, give us your overall assessment. You've been covering elections in Imo State and Owerri, to be very precise, throughout today. Summarize all that has happened today for us and for our viewers.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. The entire atmosphere has been very calm and peaceful, and people have gone out to cast their votes, with majority of them still indoors doing one or two domestic chores, which just assume. Now, earlier in the day where we covered the PDP go-back candidate, Sam Anyanwu, in his local government area, Kedulu specifically, he cast his vote at a primary school in Obodo, Amaimo, in Ikeduru local government, sometime around 10:08 a.m., where he made his reservation. He wasn't so specifically happy with the conduct of the election. He said he expected much more from the electoral empire, although he was not too specific in areas where he wanted them to improve in future elections. But he said he was not so happy with the way the election went. However, he expressed optimism of victory at the end of the day. But so far, so good in terms of security-wise. This situation has been very tight. Security personnel moving all over the town, patrolling to ensure that there's no breakdown of law and order in the metropolis, particularly in Owerri, the Imo State capital.
Right, of course, and we do know that the highlight of these proceedings is about to begin, which is the counting and collation of results. What's the mood and the atmosphere? Do you foresee the state of calm being maintained throughout this process?
Yeah, I did say, let us be hopeful. We may not be too pessimistic about the situation, but the message here is that of hope. And we hope that as the results, the votes are being counted and results are coming in from different polling units, wards and local government area, all party faithful, all party supporters, even the voters will remain calm regardless of whether their political parties are leading or not. But what we are looking at is that at the end of the day, whether it swings to any of the party, a winner will definitely emerge. But in all, we're expecting to see a very reserved reaction from all the parties involved in this election process.
All right, Emeka Monye coming to us live from Owerri in Imo State. Thank you so much for that great summary of events on the ground. We come back into studio and still with you, Emeka. Let's go back to Senator Dino Malaya, the candidate for the PDP in Kogi State. I want to take a piece of what he said, which is, of course, he was asked about voting, and he says that, they said, we did not see you voting. So he says, well, you went to the wrong polling station. So we don't have, we are yet to see images of him casting his vote. So we can't say whether he's voted or not, but he claims that he has voted. His inability to make a public, exhibition of him engaging in this process, is that something that will hurt his chances, or do you think it will help his case?
Yeah, like he said, all politics is local, and there's also that a lot of showmanship that goes into politicking, into electioneering. People want to see, that you're casting your votes. That's why you even see some politicians, they try to make a show of them casting their votes. Yeah, well, whether he did that or not, well, is up to him. It's his personal decision. But I think basically the people are sufficiently aware of the need to exercise their rights in terms of elections. But the problem is that the conduct of successive elections has really not been so impressive. Has not helped Nigerians to say, okay, we want to come out in our numbers to cast our votes. And that says a lot about the credibility of each election. We still find the same problems. In today's elections. Of course, they talk about the collation centers. Yes, we heard the DIG saying the mounted area surveillance, they've done all of that. We saw all of that during the 2023 elections, but the question still remains. Those who will not be under area surveillance, who will work overnight, will INEC and security agencies ensure that they do not subvert the will of the people? That's very, very important. So we must let INEC know that it has not impressed Nigerians to a large extent. You still find the same issues. I mean, look at the REC in Kogi State, denying delegation about pre-filled result sheets. Well, I want to believe him. But the point is that, you see, for things like this to even occur, says a lot about the fact that you find out that there are still INEC officials who have not learned any lessons from what happened in 2015. There are INEC officials who were jailed by the courts for alleged involvement in electoral malpractices, for collecting bribes and all of that. But you still find reports of INEC officials engaging in one form of conduct or the other that does not help the electoral process, that goes largely to undermine the electoral process. So everyone is focused on INEC to make sure that it can redeem itself. But what we see, voter turnout is very low. I mean, talking about 13%, like Achike said, in Imo State. I mean, that's very poor. You don't even find that in local government elections or some other smaller elections. So what does it say? It says a lot about the violence. There's been so much violence in the build-up to today's election. And it's not just enough for the security agencies to tell us they've deployed so many people. What we want to say is, who have you arrested? Who are the big names, the big guns you have picked up? Where are the thugs you have picked up, the suspected thugs you have picked up? What have you done to ensure that people can vote? Because we understand that in some places, people are not even allowed to vote. In some places where people resisted such violent elements, they were, gunshots were fired. So the process still needs to be made credible by INEC.
All right. You mentioned the process needs to be made credible by INEC. Permit me to turn our attention to Achuke today in Abuja. Achuke, you've heard Emeka speak, and when Benga Shiro, who was in Ganaja, spoke to the REC there, he denied anything happening in Ogorimagongo local government. Meanwhile, INEC has released an official statement that investigations will be done. And its official is claiming the incident is fictitious. What do you make of this?
Well, he's protecting his back or his backyard and not knowing that the matter is already there and that the commission has promised to look into that. Again, he speaks a lot about, says something about the people who are in charge of the process. It is not as if he's expected to be everywhere when certain things happen. And his officials, you have INEC monitors, as against observers. You have INEC monitors. INEC monitors are not in all the polling units. They are not in all the wards. Their job is just to move from one place to the other to ensure that things are moving in the right direction. And so when he hears this from credible civil society organizations, it's not to dismiss it completely. Because there is the possibility that these reports are true, especially coming from credible organizations. So it's unfortunate that he has taken that position. Yes, we're talking about essentially the process and what will make Nigerians, come out to participate in the process. But again, let's just say that this is not an isolated Nigeria or Nigerian election. It's not an isolated case. What is happening in Nigeria is happening across the African continent, across the West African continent, where you have of course, somebody, I think in an earlier program, somebody had talked about state capture. Look, the fact that the people themselves cannot determine, look, if you look at even the original definition of a democracy, government of the people, for the people, by the people, then you ask yourself, if you look at the interaction and the relationship between the people and government, between the people and those who govern, is it really a government of the people, by the people, or for the people? Because once you interrogate that, of course, it's all about, you actually say, no, this is a government of the few, for the few, and by the few. Because it is the few that determines what happens. And so what you see, it is getting to a situation where people now begin to see elections, for instance, as a ritual that just has to be done to give the impression that you have a democracy in place. But let me just say this, that the absence of military dictatorship and the control of the levers of government by civilians is not an indication of a democracy. Some of the worst despotic regimes in Africa, are supposed democracies under Mobutu Sese Seko, under the butcher of the Central African Republic, Jean-Bede Bokassa, and many parts of Africa. You see what looks like democracy, but it is not actually democracy. And so these are some of the issues. And election is one thing that has become a bane of the African continent, where you cannot, eventually from one country to the other, it's only very few African countries that you can begin to say, yes, progress is being made. So it is not a new thing. The reality is that the character of the politician has not changed from what it was, but it has gotten worse. And I'll just tell you, so the question you ask yourself in the final analysis really is, from 1999 to date, have we made progress? When you say, okay, fine. Before we used to have maybe an interregnum, for about 10 years before, or we have maybe 5 years, 6 years governance by the civilians before the army strikes. And the fact that we have not had, military incursion into the politics of Nigeria perhaps could be seen as an indication of progress that has been made by the, by the civilians. But that might not exactly be so. Because if you look at, from 1999, for instance, how many troops were we, or security men were we deploying to states? It has gotten worse over time. So that tells you that, we were having, for instance, you would think that if we started with 20,000, 30,000 in a particular state in an off-cycle election, as we continue to, imbibe the ethos and the ideals of democracy, that you continue, and we have subsequent elections, that you continue to draw down on the number of security. So you don't need 30,000 anymore. You now need 20,000. In the next cycle of election, you don't need 20,000 anymore. You need 10,000. But what we have seen is an increase in the deployment of security forces. That can only be an indication that there is something wrong with that process and it is not working and it's not making much improvement. So these are some of the issues that we are contending with.
Yep, certainly, and very poignant issues as well. However, we do need to take a very quick break, but don't you move. When we return, our continuous coverage of the off-cycle polls taking place in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states continues.
You're still watching the continuous coverage of the off-cycle elections going on in Imo, Bayelsa State, and Kogi State. Now let's tell you the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in Bayelsa governorship election, Senator Duye Diri, has joined other voters to exercise their franchise at the Sampao community in Kolokuma, Opukuma Council area. Describing electoral process in the area as seamless and largely peaceful, Diri, however, called on the Independent National Electoral Commission to address allegations that the supporters and agents of the PDP are being prevented from taking part in the process by suspected political thugs in Nembe Council area. Arise News correspondent Theophilus Agide reports.
As early as 7 a.m., election officials and materials were on ground at various polling units in Sampo community, Kolokuma Opokuma Council area. Candidates of the People's Democratic Party, Governor Duye Diri and his wife, were among the earliest to get accredited and vote at the Kalamaowe Ware Ward 6, Unit 3, where the exercise kick-started at exactly 8:30 a.m. Diri later spoke to journalists over the exercise in Sampo and in Opunembe, where voters' intimidation and exclusion was said to have taken place.
I think this is an improvement on all the other elections that I've participated on. And very seamless, very fast. It is too early to call. We are still putting our ears to the ground as to what is happening in other polling units. For concerns, yes, we have concerns about Nembe Basambri, where party members, most of whom have been excluded, our agents have been stopped from going into Nembe. And so that's a very serious concern. Our party has written an official letter to the chairman of INEC. And INEC has to take drastic actions to ensure that people are allowed to go in there to vote.
The exercise recorded a large turnout of voters, of which a significant number were women.
With what I see, everywhere is peaceful. It's actually going accordingly. Everything is in order to the glory of God. We pray that the rightful person that God has ordained should come out victorious.
This is one Bayelsa state. Whosoever that emerge in the winner is still a Bayelsa, and he has to call on the losers to himself and then embrace peace, then take Bayelsa as one.
There was, however, few incidences of voters who had difficulties locating their polling units.
So I made my card at this sample here. So when I woke up this morning, I looked for everywhere. I didn't see my units.
They created more units in Sample Ward 6, thereby moving those in the overflow to these new units. So many people are finding it difficult to locate where they have been moved to. So we advise her to be patient, go back and search those overflow units.
The governorship election conducted in Sampo community in Kolokuma Opokuma is peaceful, as you can see. However, this appears not to be the case in some other communities where violence have been reported. It is the expectation of the electorate in Bayelsa State that whoever emerges as the governor will be a true reflection of the people. Theophilus Agidi, Arise News.
This coverage of the off-cycle election continues here on the Rise News, and we can tell you that votes sorting and counting are on the way in Ayitoro in Kogi State, the senatorial district of the PDP governorship candidate, Senator Dino Melai. At the moment, You can actually see them sorting, then counting, and we'll be bringing you updates as it actually goes on. Of course, we're still covering elections, not just in Kogi State alone, but also in Bayelsa and Imo State likewise. And at the moment, we are visiting into the sorting accounting that is going on in Aitorogbede in Kogi West Senatorial District of the state. All right, despite apathy, some have actually come to witness the sorting and the counting, and it seems the homeboy might have okay, we're still expecting more to actually be done, but at the moment there is jubilation over there in Aitoro, but sorting and counting is still going on as we speak, as we await official confirmation of results from that particular polling unit and from that particular zone.
I'm drinking.
All right, these are live pictures from live from Kogi State, and I must tell you, vote sorting and counting is on the way. We witnessed one in Aitoro, and as we speak right now, more is still going on as officially voting is actually closed in several polling units in Kogi State. Hence, the vote sorting and counting. as we witness vote sorting and counting as we speak right now in Kogi State. And let's actually tell you that those that are vying to become governor of the state are Ahmed Ododo of the All Progressive Congress, Murtala Jaka of the Social Democratic Party, Senator Dino Melaye of the People's Democratic Party, and Leke Abejije of the African Democratic Congress, Olayinka Braimo of the Action Alliance. Those are the major political parties in the running to become the next party in Kogi State. So those are live pictures you can actually see across different polling units in Kogi State as sorting and counting has begun, which means that voting has actually been officially ended and now sorting and counting.
That's right. Now, of course, we know that Ayetoro is the home of PDP candidate Senator Dino Melaye, where he says he voted, but we did not get to witness. We're yet to see, to have any eyewitness accounts of him actually voting. However, he says that he has voted. And just to give you a recap, Kogi State has 1.93 million registered voters, but 1.83 million collected their PVC with 3,508 polling units. This time of the election is always very sensitive because, you know, we're looking at images of 1 or 2 polling units, and it's easy for people to get carried away and feel as though just because something happened at one particular place is reflective of the general election. 3,508 polling units. We have to keep that in mind, and that is why this part of the election is so sensitive, because we don't want anybody to get the wrong idea about what may transpire throughout the day. 21 local government areas, 18 candidates, as Aaron rightfully put it. And biggest issue out of Kogi State today, the issue of pre-recorded results sheets. We know that the results sheet is the beginning and the end of an election where evidence is concerned. We saw with the number of cases that ended up in the election tribunal. This piece of paper is your election, So the fact that there's reports, confirmed reports by INEC that some of these result sheets were tampered with, not a great indication, but great that INEC has, of course, come in and confirmed that they're aware of this. We're still waiting to know what the corrective measure will be. However, this is good to see. The process itself is not marred in every single polling unit of Kogi State. You can see the polling agents, party agents, are filling in the result sheets as they go. Very important part of the process.
The question will be, what would it mean for the final collation and announcement of results for this particular off-cycle election in Kogi State if a particular local government, amongst the 21 local governments, talking about Ogori-Magongo local government, right now has a huge question mark on it in terms of electoral malpractice, literally. Of course, INEC have said in an official statement that they are investigating the allegations that have been made, and certainly we would like to hear from them soonest the outcome of that particular investigation and what will become of this particular result and also this particular election, because Senator Dino Melaye has taken massive reservations to this and has actually spoken about the conduct of the election. Also, Mukhtar Ajaka of the SDP has also called out INEC and said, not just even in Ogori-Magongo, he has also mentioned that he actually got reports of electoral malpractice in Okene, Okehi, and Adavi local government areas in Kogi State. So at the moment, all eyes are on Kogi State, and INEC certainly are on the hot seat as they should be on top of the game to ensure that a free, fair, and credible election is actually carried out. And we have Sefia Bichi from Jaeger Africa to join us in the coverage of the election. Good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
All right, Sefia, what do you make of the electoral process today? We've been looking at the electoral process as it's played out in Kogi State, in Bayelsa, and also in Imo State. peculiarities and issues arising in different states, and there have been talks about electoral malpractices, electoral malfeasance. All right, in some of the states, of course, in Bayelsa State, in Nembe, we've heard about issues in Nembe, a local government area in Bayelsa State. We've heard about Ogorimagongo local government in Kogi State. Talk to us today.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I think I'll start with the positive part of the elections, and this is talking to the electoral process before I go into some of the critical incidents we observed, as you highlighted just a while ago. But going back to the election logistic and deployment, we saw that there was a pretty early deployment, especially in Kogi State. By 7:30, 64% of polling units we observed had polling officials. And by 9:30, over 50% of polling units in Kogi and Imo State had common accreditation and voting. We've also, our observation has also noted that there was adequate deployment of election material. Beavers were deployed in all the polling units observed. Major election materials such as indelible ink, voter register were deployed in most polling units, voting cubicles. I think we had just about 1% of polling units we observed in Imo State where indelible ink and official stamp were not deployed, and 2 to 3% of polling units in Kogi State where we had indelible ink and voting cubicle not deployed. But going to some of the negative trends we observed in the elections, these trends were caught across all the 3 states we observed. And starting with Kogi, we observed, as you highlighted a while ago, that there were polling units that had pre-filled election result forms. These were observed in Ogorimagongo and Okehe local governments of Kogi State. We've also seen that in the same Kogi State, there's a polling unit in Ofu local government where manual accreditation is being conducted. And we also, going to Imo State, we've also seen that in Imo State, there were some critical incidents. We had one polling unit I just have to remember the local government, where police refused to deploy.
Okay, Sophia.
Due to issues
all right, no, not to worry. Now let's look at this in broad terms. When you look at, of course, we are starting the collation and the counting process now. But if you're to juxtapose what you've witnessed today with what you witnessed on the 25th of February and the general election as well, what's your feel? Have we moved forward?
In terms of logistic deployment, I can say that we've done considerably well when it comes to election management, and even in terms of deployment of election material. The only challenge I would say is that in this election, there seems to be more critical incidences in these elections, and mundane things as manual accreditation have been witnessed in an election that is conducted in Nigeria in 2023. We know that we've moved past this since the last general elections, which is in 2019, where no manual accreditation is accepted in our election administration system. So it was surprising to see that. And to also see mundane things like kidnapping of INEC officials in Sagbama local government, and the boat mishap that seems to be a trend in state or governorship elections in southern edge of Bayelsa State. These are worrisome trends that one would have believed that we've gone past them when it comes to incidences and actions of different parties. And it will shock you to note that even our observers in some local governments in Imo State were even not allowed to observe. And we also recorded incidences where polling unit officials were requesting for money from party agents in order to allow them to observe the electoral process in some polling units. So these are issues that seems to be predominant and to an extent characterize some of the activities we've seen in the polling unit. But in terms of election administration, we've seen a significant improvement in logistic deployment, in commencement and deployment of sensitive and non-sensitive materials, and even in terms of deployment of security agents. We've seen that across the state, we have over 96% security deployment in all polling units observed in today's elections.
All right, Xavier. Let's turn our attention to Emeka here in the studio. Emeka, certainly you've been keenly observing proceedings as it plays out. Of course, Kogi State in our focus at the moment because we've actually received live feeds from there concerning sorting and counting of those papers, like we've actually seen. And so far, so good. With all you've heard about electoral malpractices, just summarize the happenings in Kogi State for us.
Yeah, well, from what we've seen, what we've seen and heard in Kogi State, there's the elections, the governorship election has held, but there are areas that give much worry. I mean, the violence. A party supporter is said to have been killed by agents of another party, although, well, it's not yet confirmed. But the point is that, just like it was said, that in certain areas, there were security lapses. Still, the issue of the pre-filled election results, those result forms, that issue is hanging. It's a serious indictment of the entire process. I mean, ordinarily, it can lead to the cancellation of election in that area. I think INEC should just cancel the election in that polling unit or in that ward, and anywhere else such has been observed. So when we see, yes, thankfully, the election has come to an end in a number of areas and counting is taking place. But of course, between that point and the collation center, there shouldn't be any strange developments. There shouldn't be any usurpation of the will of the people, because that's what you see. You see a lot of it, has happened, a lot of that has happened in successive elections. So INEC, the onus is on INEC to make sure that it walks the talk. It has told us it doesn't have any favorite candidate in any of the states in the election. We must see that play out because people are watching. Nigerians, even though the turnout is very low, but Nigerians are also watching keenly to see if INEC can make a difference, no matter how little. I want to tell you that the confidence in INEC is very low. You can see a lot of, you can see from the reports here and there, the confidence level, INEC's confidence level has really dropped. It has even got worse today, because if INEC officials are not aligned party agents in some places, are not aligned observers in some places, then of course, what it raises the suspicion that they have ulterior motives for doing so. And that is a huge indictment on INEC. And I think INEC should come clean on all these developments. It's not just about promising we'll ensure a thorough investigation, and then at the end of the day, we don't see anything. They just gloss over it. Then if such a matter goes to the tribunal or the court, we now begin to hear some funny excuses, technicalities. They'll use technicalities to, brush those very serious allegations aside. We cannot continue this way. Nigeria must get better in terms of election management.
Now, as we talk about, us getting better at election management, I just took some time out to visit INEC's iRev portal to see, have we moved forward? Are we going in a positive direction? You look at Imo State, so far 20.89% of the results have been uploaded. So 994 out of 4,720. That's as of 3:32 p.m. November 11, 2023 on the INEC portal. So Does this inspire confidence? What does this do for you? Because again, I keep going back to, the digital component of our election because, when we look at Electoral Act 2022, this is the future. This is where we want to go. And these smaller scale elections are our opportunity to really key into these things, perfect them and be able to scale them up to a national level in future. Do you think that confidence can be built and re-inspired from this? Or do you think we're always going to discount the fact that, well, they're off-cycle elections, we're dealing with a smaller terrain, so let's rely on them for smaller elections, but when it comes to national elections, let's play by a different set of rules?
No, the rules must be the same. And I think we, like former President Goodluck Jonathan said, we need to do something about these off-cycle elections, find a way to bridge the gap so that all the elections, hold on the same day, scheduled dates. Now, INEC, yes, so far so good. The IREV is working, as you said. But the big problem is that will INEC not come out to deny that IREV, to deny the results on the IREV? Will INEC not come out to claim that technical glitches observed in the back room of INEC, in the back room of the server, have made it to say, okay, it cannot totally rely on the IREV. Like I said, the onus is on INEC. Are they going to redeem themselves? The actions of INEC officials don't inspire confidence. Because you see, at the same time INEC is posting on IREV, you see people posting on social media, all different results are coming out as we speak. So, if at the end of the day, we see that INEC is coming up with the same excuses, okay, this happened and that happened, and then we have to travel the same route all over again, then I'm afraid in future elections, the turnout will be worse.
All right, let's turn attention to Sefia right now in Abuja. And Sefia, we've spoken about hitches in this particular election. My question is, what are the consequences for these lapses we've seen in these local governments we've mentioned? You've mentioned one in Imo, you've mentioned Nembe in Bayelsa, you've mentioned Ogoremagongo in Kogi State. What will be the consequence of all this hitches and lapses in the overall scheme of things?
Yeah, for me, I'm of the opinion that INEC should cancel elections in those locations, and especially for those elections that have pre-filled result sheets. Elections should be organized on a later day. It can be tomorrow, so that the voters there will be allowed to exercise their franchise. And for those polling units that conducted manual accreditation, of course, elections in those polling units should be cancelled. Then for other polling units where probably elections were not cancelled, but thank God for the one in Southern Asia, the citizens and voters there were able to salvage the issue that happened with the boat mishap. And I believe the elections were conducted duly. But to go again to touch on the issue around elections results percentage on the IREF at the moment by 3 p.m., I think perhaps it's because, and in Imo State, election didn't kick off very, very quickly in that region, even though we mentioned that over 50% of polling units started by 9:30. But we've always encouraged INEC to extend voting time on election day to allow all voters that are out to vote on election to exercise their franchise. For me, we need to do beyond engagement. All stakeholders' engagement should go beyond election day, and the stakeholders' engagement should go back to political education. Lots of things are happening, issues of polling party agents, community members, polling unit officials requesting for money. These are some things we need. This needs beyond sanctioning, some kind of reorientation process. I think after these elections, before the off-cycle elections that will be coming up next year, we need to look at and invest in political and civic education, perhaps it will build some level of consciousness among citizens and a change in attitude when it comes to engaging not just the electoral space, but the political and governance space in the country.
Is education enough to enfranchise and empower people to defy the odds? You know, there are some countries where you witness, such a perseverance. Let me not even say some countries. Even if you look at the spirit that we saw in Nigeria at the beginning of the year for the general election, we saw resilience, we saw patriotism, we saw a passion to make a contribution and to have your vote be counted, which again, time and time again, we conscientize people and try to get the call to action to get people to come out and participate. So is it an education issue, or is it that people are just becoming disillusioned because, like you said, it's a recurring story and recurring incidents over and over again, time and time. So do you think this is really an education issue, or is it really time for us to push for more of a systemic change?
Yeah, when it comes to attitudinal change, there's always an arm of education, sensitization that assists in changing people's attitude. I understand that there are some systemic issues, but you also agree with me that some of these actions, enthusiasm, young people, a lot of people demonstrate on social media does not translate to actionable or physical actions. And I agree and understand with people when they say that young people, lots of people were very willing to vote and make their vote count. But if you look at the numbers is not translating. That level of action we saw in the pre-election environment is not translated into the turnout we saw in the last elections. And perhaps we can also say that that's another form of political participation. But again, for people that believe that live in an election, in a democratic society, and we know that no matter the population or number of people that turns out to vote, the votes of those people must count. They will be the decider of our system. We should not rule out political education. We should not rule out sensitization. But again, we should also, on the other hand, engage in the activity of holding leaders accountable. After election, what happens? Should we go back to sleep? We need to hold those political leaders accountable so that they will be able to benefit from some of the dividend of democracy that is being preached all over the world, and again to ensure that the right people are the right people are the ones in government.
All right, Emeka. Let's talk about. You've mentioned logistics, but in light of what happened yesterday in Bayelsa State, we're happy that the citizens there were able to help salvage the situation, but to avoid future occurrence. How do we put in processes, especially for areas in Delta states, in Bayelsa State, in River State, whereby there are creeks and you have navigating those places are not as easy as ABC?
Well, the responsibility lies with the security agencies. They know all these places. They know these nooks and crannies. When politicians want to campaign, they are able to get to all these places we think are inaccessible. So how come the security agencies, in their numbers, thousands of them, cannot get to these areas? Particularly in Bayelsa State, Nembe has been a recurring problem in terms of violence. In terms of violence, that's been a recurring problem. Why have the security agencies not been able to do something really serious about putting down the violence in Nembe? Is it because, they want us to believe that it's inaccessible? No, it is not. So it's not enough for, you see, the DIGs.
I'm also even talking about the force majeure, which was the incident that happened, because I'm sure no one legislated for that. That's probably they would have a boat literally capsized. that were carrying sensitive materials.
Yeah, but how could a boat have been carrying sensitive materials? Well, now there was no escort. The boat capsized. What arrangement was put in place in the event of such an occurrence? That is one major problem we have in logistics management as it relates to government, as it relates to public institutions. It's not just about moving materials in different directions. What fallback plan, what backup plan do you have to ensure that if there is any hitch, if there is any problem, how do you rescue the people? How do you rescue the people involved? How do you ensure that the materials can be salvaged? You see, when we keep expecting ordinary Nigerians who have been ravaged and damaged by hunger, poverty, to always rise to the occasion to confront violent armed thugs, to confront such situations, then of course we are not being fair. Let's make our public officials do the work for which they have been put in office. Security agencies must be responsible to the extent that they can secure the people. They can secure our votes, they can secure INEC officials, they can secure INEC voting election materials. Otherwise, all this talk about we are deploying 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 will make no meaning to Nigerians at all. We must see results. And as it stands, it's unfortunate. I know in some places, I know there was an incident where it was said that some thugs wanted to kidnap, wanted to abduct and some election officials. But there was also another incident where party supporters battered each other, while election materials were being distributed. All these things should not be at all. If we want to really believe that there is no partisanship on the part of anybody, these things should not occur. I mean, these thugs are not more powerful than the state. These are non-state actors who can be easily contained. But when the security agencies choose to look the other way for certain reasons, then how do you inspire the confidence of Nigerians to come out to vote? Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to come, to be a victim of election violence. So that desperation needs to be curbed. Security agencies must be seen to be independent, to be impartial, to be unbiased, and they must also stay steps ahead of people who want to subvert the electoral process.
Right. Now back to you in Abuja, Safia. In the general election, 94% of the elections that took place ended up in court. Of course, this is the constitutional way. However, how can we mitigate the situation we find ourselves in where candidates themselves, now we're not talking about their followers, their supporters, candidates themselves seem to be disillusioned by the process?
Yeah, so there are different factors that leads to some of this outcome or reactions we see in every post-election environment. Some is that they believe that they won the election. Some is that they believe that they've been rigged out of the election. Some believe that there's a window of opportunity for them to get the elections from the other side. And these are some of the issues we have. But again, there's a school of thought that believe that the reason why our elections always end up in court, even in situations where you know that this is a clear winner of the election, is the fact that our electoral system is a winner takes all. So if you lose everything. And if you know the huge investment that goes into every election, especially in the presidential system of elections like ours, you understand why people always want to try their luck to see if they could emerge victory even outside after the polls. You've seen a lot of press statements from different people after the court rulings, appeal court rulings, be it from the state assemblies, National Assembly, and even some executive offices. We've seen parties that were not favored by the court ruling coming out to make statements of disagreement with the court rulings. These are all indicators and consequences of of the winner takes all in the political system. But if it was a system, and this I think should be a conversation for another day, but if the system is a proportional system that perhaps require some fraction of votes gotten in an election to be in either elective or appointive offices, maybe the case might be different. Then again, coming from our history, this is one of the things that I believe will be very difficult. And in other clients, you don't see people flooding to court after elections. And we also understand the economic impact of it. There are times that lawyers themselves approach these parties and tell them that there's a window we can explore to win some of these elections. And you, even though a non-lawyer, sometimes when you read the petitions of some of these candidates or in some of these elections, you'll be wondering if they really they were really serious about reclaiming the mandate they said they're going to reclaim. These are situations we find ourselves, but what we can always do is also strengthen our electoral systems. Go back, it's the post-election time now, go back to review what are the gaps in our legal framework vis-a-vis the election administration in the last general election, vis-a-vis some of the court pronouncement of the courts from the court judgments in the tribunals and also some of the appeals we've seen. And outside that is to also continue to strengthen our public institutions that are responsible for managing and supporting election day administration. Perhaps by doing that, we'll reduce, there will be a reduction in some level of election litigation that is becoming a norm in our political system.
All right, Emeka, she's spoken about making the process better, and we've seen things play out. Of course, there will be hiccup. There is no perfect election anywhere in the world. We should be able to make incremental improvements. And for all we've seen, as sorting, counting is actually going on right now. Some have even looked at it and said already they can even sense that Dino and his lawyers are already warming up to actually hit the tribunal based on all that has actually happened. And the SDP also in the state are saying that what happens to those places where electoral materials were missing. And you look at all this, and if you try to put it into a mixing bowl, now the big question that comes up from it is, what will be your message to INEC at this point in time? Because we will still be having off-cycle elections in 2024. And certainly, this is a learning process. How do we get it better?
It's very simple. Once we're committed to making the electoral process work, we'll get it right. The laws are there. There are sufficient laws to, yes, commitment to the extent that INEC knows that, INEC came out to say it doesn't have any candidate in any of the elections. But we rightfully so, but it should make sure that that is seen, not just heard. We see it happening. INEC officials, whether full-time staff, substantive staff, or ad hoc officials, must know that they cannot compromise any part of the elections. We're talking about Kogi State. Yes, there have been pockets of violence here and there, and INEC said that it will cancel the results of any polling unit where there's been violence. I think we need to see that being done. Then, again, politicians, the desperation is so much. It's horrible. Politicians want, because politics, of course, is the most lucrative venture in Nigeria today. People go into politics, they do or die affair. Whether they kill people, destroy things, whatever, they just don't care. So we must take that incentive, which is for people to go into office to loot public resources. Because it's basically not about service, going to offer service. It's more about going to enjoy benefits, going to loot the treasury. So we must find a way to remove that incentive so that people, for instance, in certain places like maybe the National Assembly, are on part-time. They are not there on full-time. They are on part-time. There are certain benefits that also should be removed from executive offices. Then, if you say that the minimum wage is 30,000, of course, like it has been said, Politicians should not be able to enjoy such humongous benefits, huge salaries, while you give the ordinary worker, 18,000, 30,000. There must be that balance. We must recalibrate the system so that all of us can feel the heat. Then you will see that this desperation will stop. Again, you see, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is there in the saddle as the president. So it lies on his table to make sure that the electoral process becomes transparent and credible. He knows all the controversies that attended his declaration as the winner of the 2023 presidential election. And I believe he has at the back of his mind, if there's any legacy, one major legacy he must have in mind is that to clean up the electoral process. It's not just about helping your party to win. Let's remember that there was a time PDP was the dominant party in Nigeria. Today, APC is the dominant party. In future, any other party could be the dominant party. So all of these efforts, if you just make all these efforts, you allow people, desperate politicians to just kill people, destroy things. What about all that? After all said and done, another party gets on the stage and sweeps you aside. What would you have gained? I think our leaders must have at the back of their mind, what legacy am I leaving in office? It's not a legacy of building mansions and having huge bank accounts. No, looting the treasury, no. They must have that legacy at the back of their mind, that children to be born in the next 100 years can say, okay, such and such and such a person tried their best to give Nigeria credible leadership. We remember the late President Yar'Adua said he will do something about the electoral process. Unfortunately, he couldn't.
On that very profound note, listen, so many valid points there, Emeka Madinago. Thank you so much for your time, your input, your insights, and of course from Abuja, Sifia Bichi. Thank you so much, Ovi Yaga Africa. Thank you so much for your contribution. Now, you've been watching the Arise News coverage of the off-cycle governorship election in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa states. It's now time for us to pass the baton to our colleague, Cynthia Are, who will be your captain from now and sail you through the rest of the election coverage in those states. I am Bambai Mutiniri Epeyong.
And I'm Aaron Akirijala. Stay tuned to Rise News.
Now, despite few cases of security concerns in some areas, voting in Kolokuma Opokuma Council of Bayelsa State was largely peaceful. In the Opokuma part of the local government area, where voter turnout was a bit impressive, a former managing director of the Niger Delta Development Commission, that's Timi Alaibe, cast his ballot. In a nearby unit, a House of Assembly representative, Wisdom Fafi, also performed his civic duty.
INEC so far has been punctual in this community. They came in early. Election started at appropriate time, the correct time. So we feel that this exercise is going on smoothly, and we believe that the results as desired will come through without any problems. The technology deployed is working, as you can see, is efficient, and we hope that the technology will back the results that will emanate from the process. I don't support the idea of manual collation of results. We hope that sometime in our country, legislation will come up to back electronic transmission of results.
Kolokmo Pokuma has been a peaceful local government from the onset. We have not recorded any form of violence in previous elections, and this one will not be different. You can see people are queued in the line, very orderly, no noise, very civil, and I want to believe that at the end of the day, it will end peacefully. I must commend INEC. Materials came on time, and voting commenced almost immediately. They didn't waste time at all. Like, look at my thumb, I've also voted, and it was seamless. So far, so good. I want to commend them, and I just hope and pray that we shouldn't have any negative experience.
Now, staying in Bayelsa State, the electorate in Ekremo town have expressed satisfaction with the conduct of the governorship election across the 42 units in the headquarters of Ekremo local government area. Voters at Ward 8, Unit 42 in Ekremo town, including the president of the Joy Youth Council, Jonathan Lokobiri, described the electoral process as peaceful and credible after they exercised their civic responsibility.
If this is sustained till the end of the exercise, I would believe that it could be perhaps one of the best experiences we'll have as a people. But elections, sometimes the violent reactions come towards declaration of results. I do believe that our people will be vigilant to ensure that election results are transmitted as promised by INEC, and then the will of the people is reflected in the results that are transmitted. It is when that happens and the results are announced, just as they have been announced in the polling units, is reflecting in the overall result. That is when democracy has succeeded. It's clearly showing that the people have taken their destinies in their hands by coming out en masse to vote for candidates of their choice. I have just voted for a candidate of my choice, and for now I can judge the exercise to be very peaceful so far, and I'm also happy that there's a massive turnout of our people to vote. I just hope that with the crowd I see in the community, it's reflected also in the turnout of the votes.
It's quite peaceful, and people have a lot more understanding of the process, so it's making the process a lot easier. People are behaving well. It's fun all the way around. You can see people chatting and doing what they have to do, and it's quite impressive. The votes will be peaceful all across the state, and we will have no cause for concern. I also expect that the outcome will reflect the wishes of the people. All the parties involved in it have been involved creditably well.
Our political analysts, two of them, Taiwo Olapade and Oladipo, join us in the studio for a robust conversation on the ongoing governorship election in Imo, Bayelsa and Kogi states. Good to have you with us, gentlemen. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for taking the time to be here. Well, I'll start with who responded to my greeting first. Mr. Dotsu Oladipo, with what you've seen play out today in Bayelsa, Imo and Kogi states, are you impressed?
Well, I'll say it's an improvement on what we've seen so far in this country. And why do I say it's an improvement? In terms of the turnout, we don't have the figures yet. There appears to be a little bit more response in terms of voter turnout in the three states, from what I perceive I've seen. In terms of violence, it's also an improvement. The only area where we've had somebody being killed has been in Nanyigba in Kogi State, where the person killed has been identified as a supporter of the All Progressives Congress, which is very unfortunate. In terms of INEC preparation, from what we've had so far, also from those who voted, like the clip from Bayelsa now that showed the former managing director of the Niger Delta Development Commission, Timi Alaibi, and the member of the State House of Assembly. It's an improvement. Same thing with a lot of places in Kogi, where the electoral officials were said to have arrived on time. In some places, yes, they came a bit late, in some areas in Lokoja, and then the officials also explained that they got their materials late from the registration area councils, and then before they could transport them. But immediately, even those who voted there said they settled down immediately and began work, meaning that some 10, 15 minutes after they got there, some people had concluded the process, which is an improvement on what we've always had. We're hoping also now, at this point where coalition has started, that there will also be improvement in the process. it's been noted over time that in as much as off-cycle elections are very, very problematic, in fact, sometimes more than the general election, you still have this issue of coalition to contend with, because people must be satisfied. It's not about doing it alone. People must have seen that you have done it, like some of those who spoke earlier to the Arise TV correspondent said, let's see a process where we can say wholeheartedly that this meets our expectation. Because it's a different thing from you saying we have done well and then the people saying you have done well.
Very well said. Mr. Olapade, do you share his sentiments?
Well, I want to toe the line of his argument because looking ahead of this election, particularly in Bayelsa and Kogi states, people have anticipated that we are likely to see some kind of violence or kind of voter apathy. But from the reports that we have gathered and what we have seen so far, even on the clips, we have seen that the turnout has been very encouraging. The voting period for this election, according to INEC, from 8:30 in the morning till around 2:30 in the afternoon. And according to INEC, voting will start simultaneously, immediately you have been accredited. As soon as your accreditation is done, you're also entitled to vote immediately. So there is no space in between. You do accreditation, you stay back and come back again for voting proper. So I think that also makes it so easy for the electorate from these three states, Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo states, to perform their civic right as expected. So far, we have not seen much of violence per se report as regards this election, like the predictions of some soothsayers that it's going to be bloodshed in Bayelsa and even Kogi state because of what we witnessed in the build-up, particularly during the campaign. We had some skirmishes of violence recorded in Bayelsa, and even in Kogi state, there were killings in few days to this election where policemen were killed. We saw it on camera, we saw it in the news. But lo and behold, today we have not seen report of people being killed, except for one isolated case in Kogi state, like Mr. Dotun has rightly mentioned. So I think we are happy with what we are getting so far from this election, and we are hoping now that we are at the coalition center, it will also be peaceful, and whoever people have decided will surely emerge as the governors for Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo State, as the case may be.
Very well said. Now, Mr. Oladipo, you mentioned earlier that this is an improvement, what we're seeing in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states. But I'm wondering, when you say it's an improvement, are you comparing it to what we saw play out during the general elections or previous off-cycle elections?
No. Even the general election that we just had, it's an improvement in the sense that we've not been told that there were places where equipment malfunctioned terribly to the point where people couldn't vote or get accredited before midday. For instance, the former governor of Bayelsa State, who is the candidate of the APC for this election, he was said to have gone to his polling unit. He had to go back home and then return to vote. It happened in that same state to the former governor and even the incumbent in the last election, where they had to wait until afternoon to be able to vote. So it's an improvement. It happened during the general election, also in Lagos. That should tell you that at that point, there was pressure on the facilities, because maybe the crowd, the number of people they had to attend, and then most importantly, the network. All of these things that we talk about technology, they are what they are, technology. They can fail at any point in time. It's just that in our own part of the world, we've not gotten to the point where we can say we have 90% success rate. I'm sure you must have heard of the glitch that happened to one of the telecoms company today, where it wiped off all the debts of customers. So if that happens to the service provider, then you can now imagine what happens to those who are subscribed to the service provider.
Well, there was some celebration.
Yeah, but they've said they are going to get it back because that must be some huge sum.
Yeah,
you can imagine people who borrow data, who borrow credit into billions, and then they lose that to a glitch in the system. So it should tell Nigerians that when things like this happen, we should give the institution room to breathe. Because a lot of times we come out so hard on our institutions and make them look like they are failures. But there are things behind it. I had to call the customer care person of my network provider this morning and say, see, I've not been able to call certain network in the last 3-4 days. He said, yes, it's from that other network that had a glitch this morning. So they are now going to call them and rectify it. You can imagine just making a call from my own line to another network. So these things happen, and a lot of people, especially those who have a voice or who have voices in the society, they don't try to like be mediators. Rather, what they try to do is to tear down the system, especially when they have candidates or parties that they are backing. And this is not good for the system at all. If we allow things to evolve, we are going to keep getting better. People are already talking of electronic voting. Even where we think that we've had perfection, in the US, for instance, the last election, they had to cancel some substantial part of votes for those who voted from outside the country because there were glitches. And you can't take that away from what we call technology.
I'm still going to come to you, Mr. Olapade, but what you said about when there are glitches and, giving institutions room to breathe, I'm trying to make sure I'm quoting you correctly. Yeah. When the expectations are high and a lot of investment has been made in terms of the money that has been given to such institutions, should there really be so much room to breathe when the expectations are high? Because if you pay for a certain service, for instance, you expect to get what you pay for. So in this case, if so much is put into INEC and the expectation is that you get what you're paying for, then how much room to breathe are we talking about?
Yeah, but INEC will not bring its own service from outside of this country. It's going to operate within the system. Most of these gadgets that are carried around, they have SIM cards in them, meaning that they are tied to a particular network. Will INEC go out of Nigeria to bring in a network provider? It's just a very simple analysis of what happens. We are trusting so provider to help us through with this. If at that point, like it happened this morning, there is a glitch, INEC has already paid for the service. You can't go out and say, because there is a glitch, you are now going to kill INEC. Or because there is a glitch, you are now going to kill the network provider. It shows that it can happen. And like I said, it happened in the US, even in the last election.
Yes, but right now focusing on us, Mr. Olapade, I'm wondering, do you share his sentiments that there should be room to breathe when there are glitches like with INEC? For instance, some might say they should be prepared for situations like that and have a backup plan. Do you think that it should be what he's saying, or are you thinking something else?
Well, for INEC, a lot of money was expended for the last election, the 2023 general elections. We had presidential on February 25th, and INEC asked for more time. The governorship and House of Assembly is supposed to have come 2 weeks thereafter, thereabout, but INEC solicited for more time to reconfigure the beavers and the likes, and so that's the reason why we had the governorship and the State House of Assembly election on March 23rd or 28th thereabouts, and particularly for IREF. IREF was the reason why some Nigerians and maybe some political parties believe that INEC didn't do well, because sometimes you also need to, when you are making statements, you have to be very, very careful. You have to be very, very careful. And that's why people are holding INEC responsible. Because it was on record, it was on tape, the INEC promised Nigerians that we are going to upload results on IREF. Even when IREF by constitution is not compulsory by our constitution. But INEC said it. People will quote INEC Mahmoud Chairman Mahmoud Yakub said it at in the UK. Festus of Koye said it all around the world, just to show transparency and accountability in the process. But lo and behold, like you rightly said, INEC was blaming glitches, machine error and the likes, for reason why they didn't upload result accordingly as expectation from Nigerians on IREF, particularly for presidential. But even at that, we cannot say that categorically that affects the outcome of that election. Because election, even whether INEC upload on IREF or otherwise, there are candidates and there are agents of each political parties at every ward where elections were conducted. And I know that after the election, there is the resource sheets that every agent of political party signed to show that I agree with the outcome of the result at this polling unit. So that was like a saving grace for INEC. And INEC was able to also fall back on that and say, after all, we generated results where we have the agents of all political parties that signed that this was the outcome of election at my polling unit. And that stand for every other political party. But when we are going into election, particularly this Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa, we can see a lot of improvements compared to what we witnessed during the 2023, particularly with reference to presidential election. But that doesn't mean that the election was not credible because the result was not uploaded on IREF. Because we also have agents of political parties at every polling unit where election was conducted, and they signed for election results. So that alone also even stand as like I witnessed it and I accepted it. But like I said, it is good to promise less and give more than to promise more and do less. So I think that's a lesson for INEC coming out of the 2023 presidential elections.
Fantastic. Mr. Oladipo, now let's talk about the build-up to, these elections. We saw so many things unfold in various locations, whether it was Imo, Kogi, or Bayelsa, in terms of violence, some incidents and whatnot. And we still saw Nigerians come out today to cast their votes. What does that say about the spirits of the average Nigerian that saw all the videos and read all the news of doom and gloom, but still came out today and said, "No, I'm going to try to make a change"?
Yeah, I think two things we should look at. Number one is that the security agencies give us some kind of confidence that, see, we are not spread too thin now. We have the muscle to deal with the situation on ground. For instance, some states got as much as 25,000 policemen. I mean, out of the three, one, I think 40,000, which is a lot. So, we can't rule that out. Number two is that the political parties, in my estimation, did a little bit of homework. They didn't wait for the government to mobilize. It is their responsibility. Though we have the National Orientation Agency, the Ministry of Information, and the rest, both at the federal and state level, to do that work. But the parties themselves did a substantial part of the work. Because now it is evident that 2,000 votes, 10,000 votes can make a difference. We saw that in what happened in a place like Kogi Central Senatorial District, where a few days ago, the senator from that, the representative of that district changed. And it was all a matter of about less than 10,000 votes. So if I lose that election by 10,000 votes, for instance, I will have myself to blame if I didn't mobilize enough. Because, like it would have been noticed, even the initial election before the Court of Appeal did the recounting and all the rest, it was very close. It's a situation where you have about 108,000 voters coming out in a senatorial district where you have about, I think, 400,000 registered voters. So you now see that the parties now know that they must mobilize for people to be out. And then we also saw something in action, the fact that Nigerians want to participate more in this process. If we don't, we're all going to keep leaving it to charlatans who, serious Nigerians who are now out, so that they will not leave the press of charlatans who keep repeating the same thing that we've always had. So it's now time for us to realize that if I don't go out to cast my vote, then I shouldn't have a voice in criticizing the man who wins. In Kogi State, I read of a man who came in from Kano State just to cast his one vote. And that says a lot, because leaving Kano to Kogi State, that can't take a journey. It's about a journey of 6 hours, if not more. So it shows that Nigerians are becoming more aware that we need our own fate is in our own hands, and we must take it at all costs.
Well said, and we'll continue in that line of thought. But for now, we're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back here on Rise News, our coverage of the elections continues. You're still tuned to Rise News. And former President Goodluck Jonathan has asked the National Assembly to work towards stopping off-season elections. The Nigerian leader said this after casting his ballot at the polling unit 39, Ward 13, Otoke, Obia local government area of Bayelsa State today.
Thank you so much. First, let me congratulate the 3 states that have elections today: Bayelsa State, Imo State, and Kogi State, and wish all these states successful elections, peaceful conduct of elections. But basically, because this is an off-season election, and I get worried about the issue of off-season elections. And I will use this unique opportunity to plead with the National Assembly that we need to block these off-season elections. It's a very odd, it's not a global best practice. A country can elect their people at different times, like America, some countries. They may not know everybody at the same time. But any time they go on to conduct their election, they elect everybody that's supposed to be elected. If we continue with this trend of off-season elections, based on the interpretation of our laws by the judicial officer, it will come to a time that the presidential election in Nigeria may be off-season. Probably that's the time that all of you media people and others should be worried. Look at the American system. Everybody knows when the American elections will be conducted. That's standard practice in other countries. And when I say presidential election in Nigeria may be off-season one day, some people may say, why, how? It almost happened in 2007 that I contested as a running mate to late President Yar'Adua. You know that elections, the 7 justices that presided over the case, 3 of them, in their own judgment, that the election be annulled. 4 of them sustained the election, and that is why we stayed. If one has crossed over, by now the presidential election in Nigeria would have been off-season election, and it is not the best for a country. And there's easy things to do to make sure that other states, now we have 7 states that are off-season. We need to stop there, and where possible, these 7 states too can be migrated back to fall in line with the other states, and the National Assembly can do that. That is my message for the National Assembly, my message for Nigerians today. On the other hand, I wish the election successful. I've been monitoring what is happening in Bayelsa State. I almost asked people across the local governments, and for now, no major things that we will get worried, apart from the part of Nembe local government, the Basambri part of Nembe local government that have been in conflict for quite some time before the election. Apart from that, I think the elections going on well, but we cannot conclude until at the end of the voting period. So once again, I thank you and I wish you well.
Well, Governor Bello conducted his civic responsibility at his local government area amid tight security in the area. The governor was accompanied by his wife, who also voted, and other security personnel in what was observed to be a seamless exercise in the area.
Thank you to the glory of God Almighty, myself and all of my family members, friends and relations, and all of the citizens in this particular ward, of course, in the local government, in this senatorial district, and of course, across the state, we are all enthusiastic about this civic responsibility. We have all come out in our numbers to cast our vote. I have just casted my vote, along with my family members, and others are casting their vote. It is timely, all materials were deployed within the time stipulated. And so far I have not received any complaint from any quota. The conduct of INEC so far has been so fantastic. All the security agencies have conducted themselves so far very professionally. All the citizens that are exercising their franchise are doing that freely. There's no hitches, no rancor. We're united and we are happy over this exercise. And by the special grace of God, we are going to come off very triumphant in this particular exercise. First of all, the issue of electoral violence in Kogi State, in my own time, is a media creation. Or those that are not on ground here in Kogi State. Go into history, go into record, and compare my own regime and that of the previous ones. You will discover that the regime of Governor Yahaya Bello, conduct of elections, have been the most freest, the most free, fair, and credible, and violent-free elections. So the issue of violence in our election in Kogi State is a media creation, is a figment of imagination of all those who does not want good things happen here in Kogi State. But to the glory of God, you are seeing the atmosphere very tranquil, very, very peaceful, very, very in harmonious relationship. So there is nothing like violence. And the conduct of free and fair and credible election is in the hands of both INEC, security agencies, and the citizens. We, the citizens, have conducted ourselves very orderly and very, very cordially. The INEC are doing their job very, very well, and the security agencies are equally assisting. 2019 general elections went as far as Supreme Court, and various other courts or issues or other elections where Kogi State and myself were cited. The Supreme Court of the land have exonerated me. That those who are mentioning me or aligning me or associating me with violence cannot substantiate it, because I am a peaceful, I am a peace-loving citizen and a governor. You can see that issue of security have been tackled effectively here in Kogi State, like never before. You know how it used to be, people traveling from south to the north, from north to the south, and people sleeping without, with their two eyes open in the past. Now they sleep with their two eyes closed. Issue of kidnapping, ISWAP, Boko Haram, and other extreme groups have been decimated, and they're no longer existing in Kogi State. That is the effort of this administration or of my own administration. So therefore, I am very, very sure that the next administration, by the special grace of God, that will be emplaced by the people of Kogi State today, will take over from me and continue to build on that. And I know very well, you know where my heart is, and you know where the citizens' hearts are, and we're going to come off very triumphantly. Thank you.
That's Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State. And we still have with us two political analysts in studio. That's Taiwo Olapade and Dotun Oladipo. Thank you, gentlemen, for your patience. Of course, you listened to what Governor... Let me start with you, Mr. Olapade. You listened to what Governor Yahaya Bello had to say. He first of all thanked God and then himself, and others in his state, and basically said that violence in Kogi State is a media creation and a figment of imagination. What's your take on that?
Sincerely, that soundbite from Governor Yahaya Bello, I disagree with him to some extent. Okay. Because, like I rightly mentioned earlier, in the build-up to this election, we saw violence in Kogi. We saw violence in Bayelsa State. And people are thinking that there is likely to be a voter apathy, that people are likely not to come out as expected. But fortunately, maybe because of the huge security deployment, people came out today to exercise their franchise. But coming back to Kogi State, a few days ago, there were killings. There were killings of even policemen in Kogi State. I'm not saying was orchestrated by APC or PDP or Governor Yahaya Bello, but there were killings, and it was politically motivated. So what are we talking about? So of course, do you expect the governor to accuse himself of being behind the violence in the state? He will surely want to exonerate himself. And this is a governor that has about a few months to go in office. So he's also thinking about what is likely to come after he might have left office as governor of Kogi State. So I quite disagree with him, talking about whether there was no violence, whether we saw it. We are also journalists. We also monitor events, we monitor development. I disagree with him, without soundbite, saying that there was no violence during his tenure as governor of Kogi State. I quite disagree with him.
Well, I think it should be well situated. I mean, the violence that we had in Kogi State, if we situate it properly, we'll be able to possibly understand where the governor...
It's also a challenge for the police to also come out to tell us, because there were killings. Are you not aware that there were killings even of policemen in Kogi State?
But
the candidate of SDP, Ajaka, or what's his name, Adata, raised an alarm that there were even a kind of attempt on his life. And we're expecting, and the police even, it's so unfortunate that the police also claim that those who were killed were not even their officers, their men. Quite unfortunate.
Which we have been told in this election, if you read the statements by the military and the police, there were people who had sewn military uniforms and police uniforms for that purpose. And going to quote the CP in Kogi State now, he said the raid on the house of the campaign council chairman of the SDP was what led to those deaths, which we could have avoided if indeed in the house of that campaign council chairman,
political opponent,
you had guns, 4 AK-47s were recovered from there. They had a meeting, and then the police came, and then they unleashed violence. That for me is completely out of it, especially when we go back in time and we recall that this same Ajaka has been invited by the police and the Department of State Services just for chats. That's, to use the language in the security circle. When they invite you for a chat, it's just to come, let's rub minds, and then you walk up. You are not being accused of anything. But he failed to show up completely. And the police said it, the DSS said it. In fact, because of him, the director of the DSS in Kogi State was removed. He was redeployed, not removed. He was redeployed. And then you still fail to even honor the invitation of the new man. That for me is way out of it. We should give it to Kogi State. We knew some years back, maybe 8-10 years ago, that Boko Haram almost completely took over that state. There was hardly any movement from Lagos to Abuja by road that did not have an issue in Kogi State. That has stopped. So why then must we now have these political issues triggering violence? It shouldn't be. Politics is supposed to be a game of numbers. And no society deserves violence during election. We should let people know, and politicians should be aware of that. That unleashing violence, putting arms and ammunition together for election is totally unacceptable in any decent society. That's what has happened in Kogi State. So when we look at what Governor Bello has said, for me, I would say maybe the choice of words, the language, because putting it on the media, I'm not sure.
Wise words from both of you gentlemen, but for now, we're going to cross live to Yenagoa, Bayelsa State Capital, where the RISE Judiciary Editor, Toby Shoni, is standing by with INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner in Bayelsa, Obo Efang.
Yeah.
Oh, over to you. Go ahead. You're with Obo Efang. We'd like to know how things have played out from your perspective today, especially, regarding INEC's performance.
I'm here with INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner for Bayelsa. My pleasure. Can you share with us what have been your experience so far and councils, and say how did it go?
For this election, apart from me as the Resident Electoral Commissioner here in Bayelsa State, I had the support of 9 other states, 8 other Resident Electoral Commissioners and the Administrative Secretary of another place, and then 2 of the National Commissioners. So all these people who came to support have been in the field, have been monitoring report.
So Cynthia, are you back?
Yes, back, and thank you for sticking with us, Toby Shoni. You're still with the INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner in Bayelsa State. That's Obo Efang. I'm hoping you can hear us loud and clear. Please go ahead with what the analysis has been, so far, with how things have played out today regarding the performance of INEC. Okay. It's a glitch. It's a glitch. A glitch is #glitch. We'll be over soon. We'll be just fine with all the information we have pouring from our correspondents. Yeah.
Like the rest said, this is one of the advantages you have in an off-cycle election. You have help from elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's why the Inspector General of Police too could draft CPs, could draft AIGs to join others on ground because it's an off-season. The only thing I know that I have my fears about in off-season election was the kind of situation we had in the past, where those governors who have secured their own seats will leave their states and go and occupy the states of their colleagues contesting for election in off-season. That puts a lot of pressure. And I'm sure you remember it happened in Kaduna State where Nasir El-Rufai was said to have locked some governors in their hotel, PDP governors. We had it in Anambra State, where governors were also locked and they couldn't. So, because I wonder what governors go to do when their colleagues are contesting. Like, you all abandon your states, you take money, but it's wrong because you put pressure on that state. You put a lot of pressure. the number of security personnel they are going to take in there, the number of media men, the number of aides, and then you now want to still go around during the election period. It doesn't add up. Election is about the numbers, those who are in the states. Let the states have it easy. Let them have it easy, because it's easier for a rec or administrative secretary to deal with the numbers on ground than for you to have governors who will bring in so much money. And you know they don't travel light. They don't travel light. They go with cash and all the rest, and then you see all of this influencing the election. That's why the fact that we've had reports of cash changing hands today.
Yes.
It's not as rampant as it used to be.
Indeed, and
not as rampant.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. Well, Mr. Olapade, you know, as we begin to round up, we also heard what the former president Goodluck Jonathan had to say about off-season elections becoming a thing of the past because it's not in line with global best practices. Do you see that becoming a reality anytime soon?
Well, that may be difficult for us to achieve in the sense that we have allowed, in some cases, the courts, the judiciary to decide who win election in our own climate, which is supposed not to be. And in the last, general election.
I'm so sorry after asking you that important question, but I understand that we have some breaking news coming from Toby Shoni, who is with the INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner, Obo Efang. Please go on. Over to you, Toby.
We are going to get it.
We'll get it.
We are going to get it. Maybe they are changing sims. So
maybe because we understand that there's some breaking news. So maybe they're waiting for the breaking news. But Mr. Olapade, if you please go on.
The last governorship election that we had governorship election in 28 states out of 36 states, and the off-cycle election that we are having now, Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa are among the states that we didn't hold, the election didn't hold for governorship election during the general election this year. And also, I guess, Osun, Ekiti, and Ondo, and Edo State. And the reason being that the court decided the eventual winners in that election. So for that reason, it may be difficult for us, except we Nigerians, we change the narrative, we change our mindset regarding how elections are conducted. And I've also listened to some people talking about it's a litmus test for INEC or police. No, I disagree. It is we Nigerians. If we decide that this election is going to be peaceful, if we also decide that this election does not want the blood of any Nigerian, definitely we can achieve it. Politicians, we want to use people, and eventually they dump them. They use them, during an electionary campaign, and what do they even get back from these politicians? They quickly, by the time you are used, by the time they give weapons to people to cause crisis during election, by the time they win their election, it's so difficult for you even to have access to them. So why do you have to risk your life for one politician? It doesn't worth it. And I also listened quickly to the Yaga African man, Mr. Samson Itodo, yesterday. He was talking about the need for the people of Edo, all these states, to come out and exercise their franchise. Because if you don't vote at election, you have no right to criticize whoever has been elected, either government as chairman, president, or governor as
Gentlemen, it's been an insightful and interesting day. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Thank you for your insight. Rise and political analysts Taiwo Olapade and Dr. Oladipo. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Well, you've been watching the Arise News coverage of the off-cycle governorship election in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa states. We now hand over proceedings to our Abuja station, and they'll continue the Arise News coverage in those states. I'm Cynthia Are. Do stay with the Arise News Global channel.